everybody, and happy Sunday. It's Miss Jenichen here. For today's read aloud, I decided to choose The Ugly Duckling. And the book that I'm going to be reading is by Gool. Okay, here we go. The Ugly Duckling. First of all, before I start reading, I want to ask you, does anyone know what a duckling is? If you watched my video where I read aloud the book Make Way for Ducklings, then you will know that a duckling is a baby duck. And so this book is called The Ugly Duckling. So I wonder what this duckling might be. Here we go. One warm spring morning after Mother Duck had been sitting on her nest of eggs for some weeks, she heard a tap, tap, tap. Soon, her ducklings peeked and scratched their ways out of the eggs. They looked out and about and blinked their big eyes at the bright light. "Welcome to the world," said Mother Duck gently. "I am your mother." The little yellow ducklings quacked excitedly to see each other in their tiny voices. The last duckling was still struggling out of his shell. He emerged much larger than the others, craned his long neck, and gave a loud honk. Wow, that duckling looks much different than the other ducklings, huh? "Goodness!" exclaimed Mother Duck. The smaller ducklings looked at each other with surprise. The last duckling was gray and gawky. A bit of shell still stuck to the top of his head. The long silence was broken by a giggle from one of the ducklings. Hee hee. Soon they were all laughing and pointing unkindly at the ugly duckling. Oh, that's not very nice, huh? The other barnyard fowl came to see what all the laughter was about. They, too, started at the ugly duckling. Then the rooster crowed his disapproval. The other ducks jeered. "You're a disgrace to us ducks," one of them said. The ugly duckling huddled under his mother's wing. "You should be ashamed of yourselves," quacked the mother angrily, picking on a helpless little duckling. "Leave him alone." Up here it says the other barnyard fowl, and that word means other barnyard birds. A fowl is a kind of bird, in case anyone was wondering about that word. But the commotion means all the craziness, the commotion only got worse as the turkey and other ducks and chickens joined. "He's got to go!" they honked and clucked and quacked. Not even the ugly duckling's mother could protect him. The ugly duckling found an opening in the wall and fled across the meadow. The loud birds followed him a short distance. Then he could hear their angry voices as he darted under the fence and stumbled into the forest. Wow, this little duckling sure has a problem, doesn't he? The ugly duckling was afraid. Do you see how afraid that duckling is? Was it his fault that he didn't look like the others? Before long, he noticed that the forest was growing darker and colder. "I'll just have to take care of myself," he said. He made a grassy nest under a big tree and passed his first long night alone, trying not to think of the soft feathers of his mother and her kind eyes. Oh, poor little duckling's all alone. The ugly duckling woke up shivering with the cold. He felt lonely and hungry and not at all brave. He began to cry. Suddenly, he heard two voices. Ooh, it looks like somebody's going to come help him. Two voices. A couple of field mice had come to see who was sobbing. "Hi there," said the bigger mouse. "I'm Tim, and here's Tom. We want to know what a little thing like you is doing out here all by yourself." As the duckling told his sad story, Tom wrapped his scarf around the duckling's neck to keep him warm. Wow, those two mice sure are being kind to that little duckling, aren't they? Is that something you might do if you saw somebody by themselves? "Maybe you could be friends with that fella over there," suggested Tom, pointing to a heron in a nearby pond. "I'll give it a try," responded the ugly duckling doubtfully. He waddled to the water's edge. The heron greeted the ugly duckling with an unfriendly glare. Then hopped up on the bank. His legs were so long that he loomed over the duckling, who turned and fled. The crane was looming over the duckling. It was cowering over him. And so he fled, he ran away. "What you need," said Tim, "is to be with your own kind." He and Tom urged the duckling toward the ducks in a nearby pond. But when the duckling approached the strange ducks, he was not greeted warmly. When you're greeted warmly, you're greeted happily and kindly and with hugs. He was not greeted warmly. The ducklings jeered at him, and a big duck splashed him, quacking, "Go away!" Oh, how could anyone be so unkind to that poor little duckling, even though he doesn't look like the rest of them? The ugly duckling paddled to the shore. "No one likes me because I'm so ugly," he said sadly. "There now," comforted Tim. "I've already got a solution to your problem." He winked at Tom and pointed to a little farmhouse in a clearing. The mice urged the duckling into the farmhouse door, promising a warm, dry place to sleep and lots to eat. Sure enough, when the farmer's wife came out to milk the cow, she scooped up the ugly duckling. "Are you lost?" she asked gently, and brought him into the house. Maybe this could be the solution to the ugly duckling's problem. We'll have to keep reading to find out. Oh, I'm so sorry, my camera's moving. Let's see. The duckling slept in a basket that night and had scraps of bread to eat in the morning. But as the days and weeks passed, he felt more and more lonely in the small house. How many of you are feeling lonely in your houses right now? I know Miss Jenichen is. But as he longed to swim on the water and feel the breeze ruffle his feathers. He missed his friends, the mice, who sometimes came to peek at him through the window. So right now, the ugly duckling was taken in by the farmer's wife or the farmer and is indoors, huh? Do you see how you can see the glass? He's inside, but he wants to be outside, doesn't he? One day when the farmer's wife opened the door, the duckling rushed out. "Let's go," he quacked, and the three friends ran across the meadow. He was not meant to be stuck inside, huh? He needs to be in the wild. They played tag on the lakeshore, but the duckling had an unfair advantage because he could swim. That night, the duckling found a bush to sleep under, and the mice slept in their burrows. And so the days of summer passed. The duckling stopped wishing for his own kind, feeling happy by himself or with the mice. Soon it was autumn or fall. And the lake started to echo because it was hunting season. The birds began flying south, and once the ugly duckling felt a strange longing when he saw three beautiful white birds pass slightly overhead. Winter came as suddenly as the snow one night, and in the morning laughter rang through the air as the ugly duckling and the mice slid down a hill. and shook snow off the trees onto each other. The woods and the meadow looked beautiful cloaked in white, but winter was not so much fun later that day when it turned out to be bitterly cold. Mice have fur to keep them warm, but birds have feathers, don't they? So they can't keep super warm in the cold like snow. The three friends decided they had to seek warmth. The wind blew at them as they trudged through the snow. Oh, suddenly Tim shouted, "Look, the farmhouse!" But just at that moment, the duckling collapsed in the snow, and the mice couldn't help him. "We have to get help fast," said Tom, "before he freezes. Quick, run and get the barn mice." Tim scrambled to the barn, and before long, he returned with help. I wonder what will happen. The mice heaved and pulled and pushed the duckling through the snow until at last they managed to get him into the barn. "Over here," squeaked one of the barn mice. "That's it, easy does it." Tim and Tom were afraid that their friend might never wake up. Lovingly, they made him a nest of straw and huddled close to him through the long night, patting his feathers with their little paws. What kind friends he has, huh? Light slowly filtered into the barn as morning came, and suddenly the duckling raised his head. "Where am I?" he asked. Cheers filled the barn as the mice shouted with joy. The duckling listened as the mice explained what had happened. "You're the best friends a duck could have," he said to Tim and Tom. "And thanks," he said to the barn mice. The friends decided to spend the rest of the winter inside the barn. They passed the days playing charades and hide and seek. When spring came again, the duckling yearned for the woods and the lake. Tim and Tom thought of their snug burrows near the lake shore. One day they decided to return to the lake. They thanked the barn mice for their help and friendship and set off across the meadow, waving goodbye. When the friends slipped under the fence at the edge of the farm, the ugly duckling suddenly began to cry. "What is it?" asked Tom. The duckling had remembered the birds he had seen flying south in the fall. They were graceful and white, and all winter their beauty had haunted him. When he told the mice, they tried to cheer him up. "Those were swans you saw," said Tim. "They should be back any day now. I'm sure that they'll want you to join them." What do you think the ugly duckling is going to do now? Let's find out. But the ugly duckling felt sure that no bird as beautiful and proud as the swans would welcome him, and he only felt worse. Just then he heard a honking overhead and looked up to see the swans circling over the lake. The beautiful creatures lighted up on the water. "Come over here," cried Tom to the duckling. "I've got something to show you." The duckling joined the mice at the water's edge. At their insistence, he peered at his reflection, and suddenly he caught his breath. So here's the reflection of the swans, and here's the ugly duckling. The reflection he saw was not that of an ugly duckling at all, but a swan. Suddenly he realized why he never fit in with the ducks. He had been born a swan. He hardly noticed that the mice had climbed aboard his back. Quickly he paddled out to greet the swans, his heart pounding. His heart is probably pounding because he's excited, but maybe a little bit nervous to meet other swans. The other swans stared with surprise when he approached, and the ugly duckling prepared himself for their jeering. As they stretched their long necks towards him, he expected the worst, but instead they stroked his feathers with their bills, accepting him as one of their own. No one was happier at that moment than the duckling's devoted friends, except perhaps the one ugly duckling himself, who had turned out to be the most beautiful swan of all. The end. I really hope you enjoyed the story, The Ugly Duckling. And I can't wait to see you all soon.